Hey everyone, how's it going? Juan Dhas here, and welcome back to another YouTube lesson. And today we're going to be talking about reading. And yes, this is without the guitar, it's more of a discussion, and I want to put forward why people should consider learning to read. On my last video, in which I was talking about, how to build a practice session, how to construct a practice schedule, someone left a comment asking why I would recommend someone learning to read, especially as a jazz musician. I think it's an incredibly valuable skill. It's something that's useful. There are multiple reasons, and I left a response, but I wanted to do this video to cover some of the nuances, some of the parts that I think maybe don't necessarily translate well over text or over a written message. And maybe I can take my time and dive into, as I said, some of the different aspects of why you probably should learn to read. So, getting into it, I want to just make a clarifier. I am understanding of the fact that, reading is not for everyone. Especially if you're a hobbyist, maybe, it's not high on your priority list. You don't have to learn how to read to make great music. I want to put that out there. There are so many musicians in history that prove that wrong. You don't need music theory to make good music. You don't need to read to make good music. But for the most part, it certainly helps. And I've noticed that in teaching students, I've seen progress ramp up because it's much easier to explain and understand concepts for the most part as a result. And reading helps you communicate with musicians, it helps you communicate with other instrumentalists, it makes you easier to understand, it makes other people easier to understand. There's so many benefits, but anyway, I'm just going to dive into that here, and I wanted to get that out of the way, because I know how uncomfortable it can be for guitar players. Sometimes it is a point of contention, it's not easy to run with, so trust me, I empathize. I learned to read much later in my development. I didn't start terribly young, like when I was 8 or something, with reading for guitar. I actually didn't even start playing guitar until I was 12. So please consider that. Okay, now why should you learn how to read? What are some of the points that should be taken into consideration? The first of which is it just helps you learn your instrument. I found that through reading, it actually acts as a very great complement to learning scales, learning arpeggios, learning your chords, things like that. Not because you read a chord book and you see where the chord sits on the staff and you learn that voicing, but you learn what each note is. When I teach students, I'm deliberate in saying, yeah, so this chord is, okay, D flat, A flat, C, F. And I want the student to figure that out themselves, because that's eventually getting them to map their fretboard in a very subconscious way. It's not like, okay, I'm seeing this through intervals or I'm seeing this through systems, but you're eventually just getting used to, and it's a long process. It's not something that happens like that. You're just getting used to where everything is located, what certain intervals will look and feel like, or at least what notes make up a certain interval or make up a certain structure. I found that as I learned to read, my ability in understanding the instrument also improved. And this is something I noticed as someone who's practicing a lot and working on many different things at once. And reading was one of those skills that I ended up, after a while, really cherishing. So that's point number one. It's actually quite simple. It just helps you learn your instrument. It actually also helps your rhythmic reading, as an aside from that, and your understanding of rhythm. Many people's rhythm improves once they learn how to read, especially guitar players, because, part of it is a visual component. Especially, for example, rhythms like 16th, 8th, 16th. Once you make that connection of, oh, that's what that looks like on the page, and this is how you clap it or play it or whatever it may be, it sticks with you. And I learned that also through transcribing, because I would write out transcriptions and I would see what the rhythms would look like on the page. So that helped me a lot. That's an aside. Now this is the biggest point as to why many people recommend learning to read. And this is for the working professionals or people who want to work as a musician. It helps you be hireable. Many gigs, or some of the better paying gigs, require you to either take the gig on very short notice, or they require you to learn how to read. In the jazz world, especially in the contemporary modern jazz world, when I get hired to play on someone's album, some of the music is very intricate. Is it possible to learn it just by going off recordings or just by going off of a mock-up? Yes, but sometimes those mock-ups don't necessarily exist yet. So someone just has a chart and you're helping them arrange it in the process and come up with that recording. If you play Broadway, if you play musical theater, if you play pit gigs, if you some top 40 stuff on occasion, if you do studio work. When I was recording for my friend Daniel Hines, one of the major points I had to consider was some of this music had multiple guitar parts. They had maybe 4 guitar parts at most, some of them minimum 2. So not everything could be picked up by ear. And because the music itself was so intricate and through composed, I asked Dan, hey, could you please send me a chart? I want to do this music justice and not kind of half-ass it. So he sent me the chart, and then I'm able to record music very quickly. I've even been called for gigs, and I'm not kidding about this, I've been called for gigs an hour before I have to be there. An hour to 45 minutes. So I remember, nice, we have construction in the building again. Missed that. So, we have, an hour, 45 minutes, I've got to shower, throw some clothes on, get out the door. They send me the music, I print it off really quickly before I run out the door, and I'm on the bus or the cab, or I'm in the cab, reading the music and mapping stuff out as I'm on the way there. And we run it through once, twice, at most 3 times, record, and then we're done. So it allows me to be very quick, very malleable. I've even been sent whole set lists, like 10 to 20 tunes, maybe a couple of hours before gigs. So, some of them are tunes I know, some of them are tunes I don't, some of them are intricate, but it allows me to jump in very quickly. And I do want to clarify, I'm not talking about sight reading. Sight reading is, your ability to read something that someone has immediately put in front of you and synthesize that information quickly. I'm talking about general reading, which is usually much easier to develop, and most guitar players don't freak out as much about reading so much as they do sight reading. So remember that distinction between the two, okay? But that's a big one. It helps, you can get to a gig and not feel worried, and I can read at a high enough level that I can make it through gigs convincingly and at a very high performance capacity. Now the other point, and this is kind of a personal one for me, but I think it's very useful for students, and that is it makes them more independent. One of the best things you can do as a musician is develop your sense of independence, and that means learning repertoire, learning your, improving your time feel so that you don't have to lean on another band member, how you can get information from the world around you. When I read, some people know me, I've transcribed horn players, I've pulled out transcriptions from of those, or piano transcriptions, or I read through classical sheet music a lot. And some people ask me, oh, do you have guitar arrangements of these, or are you using tabs? And I say, no, I just pulled up a score from IMSLP because it's public domain, so it's free, right? So I just pulled up a score, and this is the violin sheet music for the Bach Partita in G minor. And yes, I'll sit down, I'll take my time to work through all my fingerings and work through my whole procedure, take the time to really figure out how it lays on the instrument, but I'm reading directly from the source. Or, I'm working on Bach chorales. That's actually next week's video that's in the pipeline. Why I read Bach chorales. And people ask me, oh, are you using a guitar arrangement? To which I reply, no, I just pulled up the 4-part vocal score, and yes, even though there's some bass clef and I'm a little slower at bass clef, I can still synthesize that information and put it on the instrument. So it turns into this thing that I can learn about music and I can pull inspiration from all of these different sources. And you know, some music might not have charts or not have sheet music. Many folkloric traditions do not have sheet music per se. So you've got to work on your ear as well so that you can get the best of both worlds. You know, I can learn some cultural traditions just by listening to the music, but I can glean ideas from composers by pulling up a score that they wrote and just reading and translating it right to the instrument. So it increases your sense of independence for just how to learn, which I think is one of the most powerful things you can teach somebody. This is a thing I learned from one of my teachers very young. I think the teacher's job is to teach the student how to teach themselves, because your teachers will never be around for forever. Some may leave, the student may leave, or something might happen, you know, either, as I said, the student leaves or the teacher leaves. I've been on both ends of the equation. And suddenly the student is left to fend for themselves and filter everything through the words and the perspective of their teacher, as opposed to learning from the teacher themselves. And the advice that the teacher gives is what helps the student learn. So if I can teach a student how to read or convince someone, hey, learn to read, I've suddenly given them a skill that they can use for the rest of their life and keep continuing to teach themselves, which I think is one of the most powerful things you can teach somebody. So those are some reasons why you should learn to read. Now, okay, great. Let's say you're watching this video and you're like, you know what, you've convinced me, I want to learn how to read. How do I do it? So here's the simple way. And there are kind of two ways to go about this. First way, 15-20 minutes every day, just read something. It can be the simplest thing in the world if you're not great at reading or you have no experience, but the point is you just have to start reading. Start in first position. The rest of the instrument will eventually open up. Eventually. But start with first position, start reading simple melodies, take jazz standards, you know, and just begin. That's one thing you can do. Take very simple melodies and just read them. And then maybe add the chords later, or just read the chords. You know, eventually you will get better and you will get quicker. Remember, we're talking about general reading. We're not talking about sight reading. So the important thing is you just begin to transition to reading something every day. And all you have to do is 15-20 minutes, because reading is in the beginning, reading is a very mentally taxing skill to learn. So what you want to do is ease yourself into it and, you know, not burn out. I think burnout is one of the worst things you can do, you can experience in this subject. The other thing, and this could actually make it easier, find a friend or someone who you want to practice with and read along with them. I understand the current situation might not be the most conducive thing to that, but it helps. I'm gonna give you guys an anecdote, and I always tell this to my students. My very good friend, Alec Darson, who's one of my closest friends in the world, and we went to Berkeley together at the same time. He's a wonderful metal guitar player, composer, arranger, producer, mix engineer. He actually mixed and mastered my first record, was the producer on the first record, and he actually mixed Nomad as well. So please do go check him out. He's a wonderful musician, even if he is in a totally different realm. He and I used to get together every week, I think when we were like halfway through Berkeley-ish, and just read. And we split the cost and bought a book of flute duets and just started reading them. Easy flute duets, nothing crazy, nothing out of, nothing terribly difficult to work on, but challenging enough that it was a little difficult to get through at first. I remember the first time we went through it, we tried reading for 3 hours straight. I don't recommend that, by the way. It's the last thing I recommend anyone do. You'll start seeing stuff on the walls. It's not fun. take it in bite-sized chunks, like an hour and a half or something, and take breaks in between. And in the beginning, it took us maybe that entire time to read through one page. But as we got better, we started maybe reading through 5 pages in 2 hours, 6 pages in 2 hours, 7 pages in 2 hours. And this includes flipping the parts. So, you know, he would read line 1 and I would read line 2. And then after we played it through well, then we would switch. And then I would read line 1 and he would read line 2, and so on. We did that for everything. And both of us improved exponentially as a result. And it was a great little motivator having someone there to help push you, someone to, you know, make the process a little more lighthearted, because sometimes reading can be dull. And, you know, sometimes if you screw up, you just laugh at yourself and enjoy the fact that you both completely messed up and you just try again. So it makes the atmosphere a little more lighthearted. Anyway, I hope this video was helpful. Maybe it's given you some stuff to think about. And if you're someone who hasn't learned how to read before, hopefully this makes you at least consider, you know what, maybe I want to try this, because it is a very useful skill to have. And I honestly do think it's a shame that reading has the reputation that it does amongst guitar players. And, you know, I want to do my part to change that. And if I inspire someone to at least give it a go and try it in earnest, then I think I've done my job as an educator, and I hope it inspires someone to give it a go. In any case, thanks for watching. I'm going to jump onto Patreon and talk about sight reading. So if you want to tune into that, head over to Patreon. Please do subscribe. And all the YouTube stuff, please subscribe, like, hit the notification bell, leave a comment, all of that stuff. It really does help the channel, and it's been growing a little bit since in recent months. So I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you very soon.